Hello there, welcome back. I'm Tex, and this is episode 2 of Lunar Industries, an Orbiter 2016 video series. In episode 1, we launched from Cape Canaveral in the XR2 Ravenstar, and we rendezvoused with the fuel service station in low Earth orbit. In this episode, we're going to fill up our fuel tanks and go ahead and get out to the moon. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. Alright, we're here in the cockpit in the XR2 where we left off docked at the fuel service station. So the first thing I'm going to do is open up Fuel Transfer MFD. And you can see that I've selected the fuel service station, and now I'm filling up our main tanks. Nice thing about this MFD is it has a really fast transfer rate. So I don't know how realistic that would be, but there you go. We just now topped off our main fuel tanks, and we're going to jump over to the, oops, wrong button. We're going to choose the RCS tanks and top those up. So I'm going to fill everything completely up. Again, we're using the Expert Fuel ISP. So we're going to need pretty much all of this fuel to get to the moon and land. Remembering the moon doesn't have an atmosphere, so we have to use fuel to both deorbit and, or I should say, get captured by the moon, deorbit, and land. So let's go ahead and undock from the fuel service station so we can get some accurate predictions for our plan to the moon. So we're going to go ahead and turn off external cooling. We've got everything else switched on. Undock there. Let's deploy the radiator again. And go ahead and translate back from the fuel service station just a bit. Okay, of course we need to close the nose cone. Hop back down here, and once that's done, we'll turn off the APU. Just pull up Orbit MFD. Just go ahead and get that set up, since I have closed the simulator since the last time. So we'll get that back over to projection on ship. And let's go ahead and pull up Interplanetary on the right side. We can turn off the APU at this point. We're going to jump over in the glass cockpit, hit menu, course, and target intercept, and we're going to go ahead and target the moon. Okay, so it already has a plan set up for us here, but I'm going to adjust the arrival date. It's currently 5 days. I'm going to bump it down to 4 days. Total flight time from ejection to encounter. And you can see the burn vectors there. There's some plane change and inward. But we're going to actually manually set up a plan. This is just to get started. So we're going to go over to the left MFD here and also open up Interplanetary. And on this side, we're going to go to course, and this time we'll choose the Delta Velocity program. Go down to the time of ejection, and we're going to set that to 1380, which it was listed over on the right side. And we're going to set the velocity at 3290, again listed on the right side there. So we're done with that right side. First thing, let's go ahead and set up the configuration and choose our landing target at Brighton Beach. Okay, so that's done. And then we're going to share this, share the other side, the left side, with this side. And we're going to go to the map program. So the map program's up. Let's go ahead and target the moon. And we're going to just turn off auto zoom, select the moon as the reference, go to the next page, turn on sphere of influence, and turn on the plan. We're going to press mode so we get the angle to Brighton Beach down there toward the bottom. And we're going to play with the variables for a bit here. This may take a little bit of time. But we're going to bounce back and forth between the time of ejection, the delta velocity forward, delta velocity plane, and delta velocity inward variables there on the delta velocity program. What we're looking at on the right MFD, sort of in the middle, you see PEA, and that is telling us our periapsis at the moon. So that's our lowest altitude by the moon when we approach the moon. So we want to obviously get that down really low, probably somewhere around 20 kilometers is usually a good target. But I'm also looking at the angle underneath Brighton Beach. You can see it's currently at negative 35.49 degrees. Ideally, we want to get the angle at 0 or as close to true 0 as we can. And at the same time, we want to see the periapsis, PEA, listed there in the middle again. at around 20 kilometers or so. If we can get a plan like that, that's a really good plan, and we can get to the moon with just a single burn. So I'm going to play around with the variables a little bit here, and we will talk about the plan once I get everything set up. Alright, so we've got a plan set up there, and we'll hit the burn vectors, and you can see us passing by the moon there. I'm just going to zoom out to get a larger picture. You can see our trajectory out to the moon, and we have about 410 seconds until the burn, and about 186 seconds of burn time. So just checking the vessel, make sure we're all set up for our ejection from Earth orbit here, and everything looks good. So I'm going to press the auto burn button, and we'll time accelerate and let the autopilot take care of the burn for us. But yeah, in the time lapse there, sort of with the video sped up, I'm not sure if you were able to see everything that I was doing as I was working through the plan, but I ended up using, or ended up putting a lot more plane change into the burn than I anticipated. So I'm not actually sure if that, I'm not sure why it's more than I'm used to. But then actually, now that I think about it, this is really the first time I've ever flown to the moon using interplanetary MFD. So I'm quite sure maybe Dimitri could shed some light on that. I don't know if it has to do with the timing of our launch, our current inclination compared to that of Brighton Beach, but anyways, the plan has worked. We've got a low periapsis and a low angle to Brighton Beach. So we're burning. We've got about 60 seconds of burn time left now. We're at 10 times speed, of course, and the autopilot is taking care of the burn for us. And we're 2 seconds, 1 second, and it's throttling back. Okay, so the burn is completed. Let's go ahead and start an interval timer from the time of the ejection burn, and we'll stop it once we encounter the moon. So what I'm doing now is just using my translation, my linear RCS, I should say, and translating forward a little bit, looking at periapsis over there on the map MFD on the right side. There's 25 kilometers. Periapsis and angle is perfectly at 0, so I'm just going to go with that. It's about 5 kilometers over my target altitude. But quite frankly, I think that's a great plan. I don't know that that was actually totally fuel efficient. That seems like a lot of velocity that we had to put in, specifically plane change. But it looks like it's going to get us to where we want to be within the time frame. We're looking at about 4 days of flight time. So I just turned the vessel around retrograde because I personally enjoy watching the Earth as we drift away from it. Although you can see orbital sunset just ahead, so probably going to be a little bit before we get any kind of a view until we get far enough away for the sun to come back up. So as we drift away at time acceleration here, just sort of reorient our view. You can see the night lights in the cities down below, and there comes the sun up over the horizon, so that's very cool. And you can see on the right side the predictions are going to fluctuate a little bit, but they're going to fall back within the parameters that we set as we get closer to the moon. So the map MFD, the map program, I guess I should say, in the interplanetary MFD is actually pretty darn accurate. So we should be able to do this with just the single burn and a very minimal course correction once we get to the moon, inside of the moon's sphere of influence. So as we coast out toward the moon, we'll set the center on ourselves. You can see the white circle is us and our trajectory going out toward the moon. You see the moon's position is actually to our right. So what's going to happen is we're not actually flying to the moon. The moon's going to hit us. So we're flying to where the moon is going to be, and the moon in its orbit around the Earth is essentially going to collide with our spacecraft in a sense and pull us into its gravity well. So we're almost within the moon's sphere of influence. You can see on the orbit MFD on the left side, the G-field contribution is about to go above 0.40. Actually we hadn't referenced the moon yet, but it's at 0.06. So once it gets above 0.40, we'll be within the moon's sphere of gravitational influence. And you can see that indicated on the right MFD, the map program over there, the dashed circle. As the moon approaches, we are now technically falling within the moon's sphere of influence. It's still a little weak, but there it goes. Now we're strongly within the moon's sphere of influence. So the moon has collided with our trajectory, and its gravity is now beginning to pull us down toward the moon. With our current periapsis listed at 26 kilometers, 26.91 kilometers. So we're going to open up the base program, a base approach program on the left MFD. We're going to target Brighton Beach, of course. We also want to go ahead and set our altitude to 20 kilometers. Be sure to put the K in there. And we're going to come down and choose Orbit Insert. There we go. We'll maybe change the projection here to self. That looks better. Okay, so let's just center on the moon on the map program there. And we'll also set the projection to self. So you can see our trajectory as we fall in toward the moon there. So we're looking at very minimal delta V right now over on the left MFD, the base approach down there where it says DV 2.283. That's only 2.283 meters per second. We can use translation RCS to do that, no big deal. We're going to go ahead and cross feed some of this RCS fuel into the main tank. We're not going to need a whole lot. We'll just go with that for right now. See, we still have about almost 3 full days of LOX remaining. And our mission timer there is at 3 days and 16 hours. Just taking a look at our delta V remaining, it's listed there at 3,546 meters per second. That's only counting the fuel from our main tanks at the moment. We didn't look at it, but with the main tank and RCS tanks full before the ejection burn, we actually had a total of 7,438 meters per second. What I'm looking at though on the base approach MFD over there on the left side is the delta V number. It is starting to tick up. So it's at 2.6 meters per second now. I'm also looking at PET, that's time in seconds to the periapsis. It's over 5,000 seconds right now. So when delta V, where it says en route DV, when that gets up to about 5 or a little over 5 meters per second, we'll go ahead and do our course correction burn. Or we'll wait until 600 seconds on PET, whichever one comes first. And it looks like the DV just hit over 5. So we pull up the burn vectors, and this tells us which way we need to use our linear RCS. Looks like it's down and to the right. So we don't even have to orient the vessel. We're just using our linear RCS in our current orientation. We're just translating down at the moment and looking at the total delta V remaining and bringing that to 0. And there we go. We've got the delta V zeroed out. We press burn vector again, and you can see the DV is very minimal. So that's a nice approach there with the 20 kilometer periapsis and perfectly aligned with Brighton Beach. So nice view of the moon as we approach, and you can see Brighton Beach actually indicated down there. Right at that ridge line of an old crater, it looks like there. We can pull up the map MFD just for a visual reference. We'll target Brighton Beach. And you can see where that is actually located. So we'll go back to Interplanetary, the map program there. So we're watching PET, time to our periapsis, the lowest altitude for our pass by the moon. And we need to time our burn to both get captured and circularize the orbit according to our time to PET and the time it's going to take to actually do the burn. So we'll go to the orbital program, and you can see right here it's telling us if we were to circularize the orbit right here, it would take 56 seconds to do the burn and about just over 1,300 meters per second in delta V. That's pretty high, but we're also still quite a ways from periapsis. So we're going to coast down much closer to periapsis, and we're going to basically burn when the time to do the burn number is, or I should say, we're going to burn when PET is half of our burn time. So right now, let's say our burn time, it's 53 seconds, but let's say our burn time was 50 seconds. We would burn when we are 25 seconds from periapsis, because 25 seconds is half of 50 seconds. So I'm just going to go ahead and rotate around retrograde because, well, we know we're going to be burning retrograde to get captured and to circularize the orbit. And you'll see the delta V over there is continuing to fall the closer that we get to periapsis. We're currently 780 seconds out from periapsis, and the burn time is continuing to fall, so we're just going to monitor that as we get a bit closer. Ideally, I'd like to see the delta V to circularize fall under 1,000 meters per second, and it should. We're at 600 seconds from PET. DV on the bottom left corner there is still at 0, so no further course correction is required at this time. Okay, we're 230 seconds from periapsis. Burn time has dropped to 37 seconds, and delta V is about 884 meters per second there. So we're getting pretty close. Let's say, I'm going to guess about 35 seconds of burn time. So half of that is about 17.5 seconds. So maybe about 18 seconds. So when PET over there on the left side reaches 18 seconds, we'll go ahead and click on the auto burn button on the right side. So we're going to be careful not to pass that up as we coast down to periapsis, about 40 seconds out now, time accelerating. Again, about 18 seconds we're going to do auto burn. And that's approaching 21, 20, 19, 18. All right, there we go. So we're burning. Delta V was just over 800 meters per second required to circularize the orbit. So Interplanetary Orbital Program is taking care of that for us now. You can see our orbit actually falling there around the moon on the left side. Everything looks good. And the burn's just about done. And there we go. So that looks good. So let's, we are now in orbit around the moon. Let's go back to our map program here. Zoom in. You can see the angle to Brighton Beach there also is still right on 0 pretty much. That's low enough. And look at the map MFD. You can get a visual reference of that. See our orbital plane perfectly crosses over Brighton Beach. We're going to have to go around one orbit, and we saw Brighton Beach as we were coasting down toward the moon. So we're going to go around the night side and basically land once we come back around on the day side. It is currently daytime at Brighton Beach. So we're going to just turn prograde here. We can see have about 2,708 meters per second and delta velocity remaining. That's just counting our main tanks, by the way. That's not counting anything that we have in our RCS tanks. We might transfer a little bit more of our RCS fuel into our main tank, but we should have enough to do this. Essentially what we're looking at is scrubbing about 1,670 meters per second and delta velocity, which is our current speed right now, orbiting the moon. And then, of course, we need to have fuel to use our hover engines to come down for a nice landing. Landing pad number 3 is the one we're going to take. So Yeah, so we are safely here in orbit. I think I'm going to go ahead and end this episode here. And so in the next one, we're going to pick up right where we left off and go ahead and come in for a landing at Brighton Beach. We'll just stop that interval timer there and make sure everything's good to go. So that's 3 days, 22 hours, and 31 minutes from Earth eject to being in orbit safely around the moon. Not too shabby. Yeah, so listen, guys, I hope you're all doing really well. Thank you once again for watching. This has been a really fun episode, and I look forward to sharing the next episode with you guys in the following week. Take care, guys, and we'll see you then.